Okay, so now we have seen how to do all the loops and conditions. Now we're going to apply that to file input output. And also this would be a good example for you to check before you start doing your assignment number 4. So in this, I'm going to show you how this loop or these while loops will work with a file so we can read multiple lines of data from a file without having to go into the file and count the number of lines. We want to be able to read from a file and read until end of data or end of file. So what I have here is a text file. It has name and it has PSU or PCC, which school they go to, and it has their scores. So our goal is to read this file, and if they are a PSU student, then I'm going to calculate their average. Again, this is only a part of it. If I do any more, then it'll give away the rest of your assignment. So your assignment is to check for some more conditions and do a few more things that you're required to do. In this case, I'm going to read the data. I'm going to first echo the input, and I am going to also just calculate the average for PSU students. Now I have a skeleton of a program. I haven't written all of it, but I have the header files. We need fstream and string since we are dealing with strings and we are dealing with a file. Also, I have some variables. What I'm doing here is I'm getting the file name from the user and opening it, so I'm not hard coding it. So I need a string to read the file name, and I need a file stream variable to open the file. And so I ask the user to enter the file name, and I read it using getLine, and I open the file. So input file name is the name of the variable that has the file name. So you simply pass that to the .open function. Now, here is something that we haven't seen so far. If the file doesn't open for some reason, how do you know? This is a good check. It says if not input file is open, that means if this function returns a true or false. If it is open, it would return a true. And if it is not open, it would return a false. So you check it and you see if it returns a false, then the not of it would be true, and it would come in here and it would say unable to open input file. So it would return a false if it was not able to open it properly. So then we exit, we completely quit out of the program. If that's not the case, then we come in here, and these are the things that I want to fill as we go through this video, is we read and we echo the input. And then we come down here in the next while loop, we read and we calculate the average. So let's start out with this section. What are we reading from the file? That's the first step. We have a name, which would be a string variable. We have a college, which also happens to be a string variable. And we have a score, which should be a double. So we need 3 variables, 2 strings, and a double. So let's first go declare them. So we need a string name to store the student's name. And we need a double score for the student's score. I'm going to initialize that to 0. We also need a string called college to store the student's school name. So there we have our 3 variables. Now we are going to read and echo the input. So you come here, and what you're going to do here is this statement here, while input file dot peek, it takes a peek. If you remember from chapter 3, the peek function just peeks at the first character. It doesn't really take anything from the buffer or from the file. So, and then it checks to see if it's end of file. If it's not equal to end of file, then we want to go in, and I'm going to read. Here's what you really need to do. Notice if you simply read it and output it, you'll get a jagged output. You're not going to get a nicely formatted output. Ideally, let me go up here and include my IO manip header file. Ideally, you should format it so it looks nice and neat, and now we don't get a jagged output. So we're going to read one token at a time in file, or what is it called? Input file. Read. The first one happens to be name. The second one happens to be college. The third one happens to be score. If you look at my file, that's the order in which it is. Name, college, and score. So now I've read the first line. Then I am going to output it. The minute I read it, I'm going to output it. But I'm going to output it by doing left to left justify. Then I'm going to set width Since it's only the first name, I'm going to do about 15. Then I'm going to output name. Now college can again have about 10. No need for more than that. And it'll automatically be left justified. And I'm going to say college. And last one happens to be score. So set width of about 8. And output score. And of course, I must output a new line. So the next line of data will go to the new line. So that part of it should take care of echoing the input. So we read and we output. We go back, check to see if it is end of file. If not, we read and we output. Let's see if that much of our program works. So I have something here that needs to be commented out for right now. Let's comment this part where we're going to do the calculation. And let's see if we get our echoing to work properly. So when you write a program that's a little larger, it's always good to test parts of a program. So first I'm going to type in my file name, which is called indata.txt. And there it is. So it reads and it outputs and it's nicely aligned. Notice we don't get everything all with one space and jagged. So you get a nice column aligned output, which is what we want. Okay, so then our next goal is to notice now when you're done reading, you go all the way to the last line. Now there must be some way to rewind and go back to the first line. Notice your code, your program, as it goes through this while loop where we are echoing the input. It says end of file reached, means it has come all the way to the end. Here's a way to rewind and go all the way to the beginning so the program doesn't get stuck there at the end of the file. Input file.clear is just like cin.clear, but it clears your input file, which is your file stream variable, resets it, and seekg. Seekg is a function that takes it to whatever position you put inside the parenthesis. 0 says take it right to the beginning. So these two statements will rewind your file. Now once the file is rewound, it's time for us to read the data again and do the calculation. So once I go back, I'm going to read, the first thing I read is name, just to check and see if it reads it right, or you can use the same while loop that you use there. So we have read the name. Next we need to read the college and the score. Now we need to know we only need the average if the college is PSU. So you're going to have an if. We just said it. We need an if college equals, double equals the string PSU. What do we need to do? We need to add the score to a total. So I'm going to call it total plus equals score. I haven't declared total. We're going to go up there and declare total in a minute. Not only do we need to do that, I'm going to put it inside my curly bracket here. Take that out of there. What else do we need to calculate the average? We need a count. Count plus plus. We need to know the count. We don't know any of that. We need to calculate it. We're not going to go into the file and count. We are going to do that inside our program. So we need to declare two variables. One is to keep the total score. So I'm going to call it total. In fact, I should call it total PSU so I know it's the PSU total. And count needs to be an integer. So int PSU count is equal to 0. We're going to start off with 0. So now we have the two variables, the total and the count, to calculate the average. So then you come here, and I'm going to change this. This is called total PSU, like that. And this was called PSU count, like that. So if the college happens to be PSU for that one line of data that we have read, we add the score to our total PSU score and we increment the count to 1. And then we have to read the next name. Otherwise, remember, we need an update statement always. Otherwise, we are going to be stuck on the same line. Read the next name. Well, actually, since we are reading it up there, we don't have to read the next name. It will automatically read the next name. So it'll go up there, and since we have already put it inside the while loop, it reads the next name. Then it reads the college and the score. So the update statement happens to be inside our while loop right here, while it checks for end of file. So it reads the next name, it reads the college and score, it checks to see if the college is PSU, and it will keep doing that until name has nothing in it, which would be until after the last line. Now, we need to come out here and we need to also output something. We need to output average of PSU students equals, and what is the average? We're going to calculate it. We have a total PSU divided by, we have PSU count, and that will give us, and of course we must do our set precision and fixed and all that, so we get just 2 decimal points. So fixed show point set precision 2. Okay, all right, let's see how that works. We got our echo input to work right. Now let's see if this while loop to calculate the data works right. So I'm going to say in data.text, and there it is. End of file reached for the first time. Then it reads again, and it says average of PSU students is 83.53. Now it's a good idea to check that using a calculator. We got 78.6, 88.5. That's about right. And the last one is 88.45. Oh, and this is 78.6 again. So that's about right. So you must check it with a calculator. Also output the count to make sure you get the right number of count. You must verify all of this before you assume that your answer is correct. So I would strongly encourage you to just use a calculator and verify it and see if you get the right answer. So this is very, very similar to your assignment number 4, and it does about 25 to 30% of it. So now it's up to you to finish the rest of it.